Shamindra here. Hi, Abhay.
Hey Sham, hi. How are you?
Very well, very well. Nice to see you.
Finally, we've been talking so much. Nice to see you as well.
Yeah. So I think we could be live. I think so. Maybe we can just switch off this mic for the time being. Yeah. I mean, the
Okay,
people.
perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Is there anything you want to talk about? Anything, or we can do?
No, we're good. Please let me know whenever you cue me.
Right.
I think
Right.
I'll be ready to start then. Looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Excellent. Right, Abhay. See you then. Huh? Abhay, maybe if you want, you can switch off, and we will prompt you to come online later.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So hi everyone, welcome to all of you to the second day of Startup Masterclass, and a huge good morning and good evening to all of you. I'm very delighted that so many people are there despite it being a weekend, that too early. It's not that fair, but we'll make sure that this experience is worth your while. And so yeah, I mean, let's without further delay, let's get to it. We have, I would like to extend, and the SMC team would like to extend a heartily warm welcome to our two keynotes for the morning. Mr. Abhay Singhal, co-founder Inmobi, and Mr. Amit Prakash, co-founder Thoughtspot. So now I would also like to welcome Mr. Shamindra Narayan, President of Alumni Association IIT Kanpur, to come and extend his welcome and request Mr. Abhay Singhal to come and deliver his keynote talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Apurva, for the nice introduction. It's a bright Sunday morning, and I'm happy to see so many people ready to listen to our keynote speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce Abhay Singhal, who's our first keynote speaker. Abhay is a co-founder of Inmobi Group and the CEO of Inmobi Marketing Cloud, a company whose mission is to power intelligent mobile-first experiences on connected devices. Abhay drives the company's global business, enabling the world's leading brands to reach over 1.3 billion people in over 190 countries. Amazing. Prior to his current role as CEO, he was Chief Revenue Officer and Head of Human Resources at Inmobi. During his time as CRO, Abhay drove record revenue growth globally across China, APAC, and the US markets, helping Inmobi to be recognized as one of the 50 most disruptive companies by both CNBC and MIT Review. Abhay received his bachelor's degree from IIT Kanpur. He is based in San Francisco Bay Area. Great, Abhay, it's just so impressive, introduction, which I mean everybody will be very happy to read, and it has been my pleasure to welcome you. So, Abhay Singhal, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Shyam, and thank you, Apurva, for such a warm welcome, and good morning and good evening to everyone. I hope you can hear me, and I'll be just trying to share my slide. Just let me know if you guys can see the slide, which has the word "the journey" written on the top. Can someone confirm to me, please? Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Abhay, and I am one of the co-founders of Inmobi. As many of you are aware, as many of you may be aware, Inmobi Group comprises of three main businesses, but primarily in two big categories. We run a US first business, which is primarily a software platform which enables programmatic advertising for many users and advertisers and publishers at scale. And the second business of ours, which is powering the consumer internet, which is very Asia first business that comprises of two big brands, Glance and Reposo. And both of them are amazingly at scale platform. Glance is the top 10 consumer platform, and Reposo is in the process of becoming the TikTok of India. My talk today has primarily three chapters, and each chapter has about 4 key messages. And I hope to be able to deliver them in the next 30 minutes. It's a story that started back in 2007 from our humble beginnings of what was then called as M-Code. M-Code's mission was to help consumers discover great deals on their mobile phone. And as you can see, we all started with SMS as the primary medium, and then evolved from an SMS to mobile web. Um, just to remind everyone, this was before this event even happened. Uh, and this is an event that probably changed the entire direction of how the last decade or last 2 decades of digital world and information consumption has gone. Now, this is one chart that probably depicts the journey over the last 10, 12 years of mobile. 2008, when Apple App Store launched in July, and this primarily shows that in that year, we saw about 300 million apps downloaded from the Apple App Store. And 2020, the year just gone by, we've seen 218 billion apps being downloaded on the App Store. That's I don't know how many X growth in the in the market space, but it has been probably one of the biggest fundamental shift uh, in the last 10, 15 years. Probably very similar to the shift about the entire SaaS industry or a cloudification industry, where the way consumers have been accessing the internet has changed fundamentally. And Inmobi has been uh, an organization that has literally grown as this trend has grown over the last 12, 13 years. Now, what are some of the lessons learned, or the lessons that could be very, very relevant for the audience that is accumulated here? The lesson number one: dream big. I think all of you have seen this, but how to know it is big? And our simple mantra has been that if you are too scared to say it loud, for nothing else but for the fear of being labeled as crazy, then it is big enough. Until then, it is probably average. The story that probably comes to my mind to talk about it is, I will go probably all the way back to 2008. Inmobi or India was still known as a massively large services economy. We had large companies such as Infosys, TCS, multiple different companies running large global services business. But there wasn't one single software product company out of India, or for that matter, even out of Asia, that was as large as we would want that to be. And that was our dream. That dream was very, very crazy. We hadn't seen any example of any company that had come out of Asia until then. And it was a dream that was probably very naive. It was driven out of our naivety as an entrepreneur. It was a dream that came out of our belief that the mobile is going to be extremely global. And it was a little bit of dogmatic attitude that if not us, then who else? But it always remember that the dream has to be large enough. Because if the dream isn't large enough, then the reality will always be a subset of what you're dreaming. The second example, or the second lesson, in the world where we are living in, we have to think global from the day one. And in fact, Inmobi took a very, very different approach. We grew east to west. I'll take you back to 2008, 2009 time frame. Back then, the conventional wisdom was that to be able to grow your businesses, you should have your resources or manpower and cost center in India and be selling into the US. That was typically the conventional wisdom because US is a large market and customers have much bigger paying power. In fact, in Inmobi's journey, Inmobi did not launch in the US until 2015. For the first 7 years of Inmobi's journey, we grew from India to Southeast Asia to Japan to China to Europe, and then we entered US. Now, why was it so? In retrospective, it actually it all fits very well. In the US, where internet revolution had already happened on the desktop, the digital economy was already massively large. But back home in Asia, the internet economy was actually taking place on mobile as the device. On mobile economy was the one which was bringing the consumers to experience the internet for the very first time. And we saw those experiences grow for the very first time. In fact, for the first 6, 7 years in Inmobi, we had no idea how to even connect with desktop-based experiences or the desktop-based advertising, because that just didn't matter to us. And somewhere, if I look back, that 6, 7 years that we spent in honing our skills on becoming the best in mobile helped us grow tremendously from a global perspective. The third big lesson that we learned is beginnings are the time frame where one needs to build bold people principles. I think you all may have read that, while you're hiring, put attitude before smarts, before skills. But one thing that we've learned in our journey of last 12, 13 years is that never, ever, ever give up on a person with the right attitude. Doesn't matter how successful they are or how failed they are, the attitude of a person is someone that is going to help you in your company's growth or whatever at all periods of time. And we have numbers of examples. In fact, Inmobi has been a company which has probably one of the highest retention rate of, of employees of all the contemporaries in the ecosystem. And that has been primarily because of the people who come in and invest their time and energy, and they grow within our own ecosystem. Probably one most important lesson that we learned in our journey is maximize the relationship currency as you build the company over the period of time. Now, these are 4 pictures of the co-founding team of Inmobi all the way back from 2009, running into 2020. We've all lived with just one principle, that we want to maximize our relationship currency. And every time I see many different founding teams and many different entrepreneurship experiences, I talk to many of these founders who are sort of having the struggle dealing with their co-founding chemistry, their co-founding relationship. And to all of them, I would tell one thing, that just invest on one thing, which is to maximize the relationship currency. At the intensity at which you are operating and building the organization, you will see each other's flaws and gaps probably way more than anybody else can. Figure out mechanisms how you want to live with each other despite of those flaws. And you will see that in the next chapter of our journey as to why and how this multi-founder team actually comes to a huge rescue in building large, scalable organization. In fact, if there is one lesson that I want all of you to take from today's talk, is having a multi-founding team is a good thing, not a bad thing. Just that we need to figure out how to make that whole relationship work. And Inmobi is a prime example of getting it working. If we go to the second chapter is about the grind. The grind that probably made us a company that will live here for arguably forever. A company that has become even bolder, a company that has become even stronger. As it happens with many organizations, somewhere late 2015, early 2016, we had many of these things happen to us at the same point in time. Delayed funding, some loss of customers, some changes in the ecosystem. Reasons don't matter. What matters is that we hit a pretty rough patch in our journey, and we probably had only very few months or weeks of fuel left in the organization to sustain. And remind you, we were organization at scale. We had over 700 people at that point in time. We had several $1 million of business that we were doing. We were fairly global at that approach. So it wasn't like a relatively smaller company. But it was a sizable mass, and we literally came face to face with probably becoming one of the biggest public failures in Inmobi in India's entrepreneurship journey. And that time, one of the most important realization happened. Do you know what's worse than a failed startup? It is to become a zombie startup. A zombie startup that doesn't know where it is headed. A zombie startup which is just somehow barely trying to survive, and a zombie startup that is somehow finding the next day's fuel and living in an extremely short-term way. How do we know this? Prior to Inmobi, I ran one such startup. And we delayed the process of letting that startup fail by letting it become a zombie startup. And it was probably one of the most painful periods that I lived in my own journey. So the choices that was in front of us at that point in time were, do we narrow our focus or do we expand more? Do we become short-term? Do we become long-term? Do we conserve the cash or do we invest further? And just remind you, we were probably 5-6 months away from running completely dry. In fact, we chose the path which is mentioned on the right side. We expanded more. We became more long-term focused. We invested more in our growth. Net, we ran faster towards our debt. And it wasn't an easy decision. There were countless hours of all night outs where we were trying to figure out what is to be done, what is not to be done, and so on and so forth. And in the end, the decision that was made is that if we're going to go away, let's go away by executing way more faster than what we would do otherwise. There's a huge principle that we've learned. The wartime leadership requires one to draw on the accumulated trust in the system. And if you rely on that trust that has been accumulated in the organization during the building phases, your people won't let you die. So remember, if you are investing in building people and investing in building the organization from the primary currency of trust, when you need that trust to come and help you in changing the path of the organization, your people will come in front of you and your own apparent death at that point in time. And that turnaround that Inmobi did in the next 3 months was probably something which has been written in golden words. We had to let our people go. It wasn't that it was all hunky dory. And I have probably cried every night for probably weeks at a time, because every time we had somebody let go, it almost felt like that a piece of heart was going. And the way we went about is evident from the fact that probably 70% of the people that were let go at that period of time all ended up returning back to Inmobi over the next 2 to 3 year period. One other important point, just remember the point that I mentioned about attitude. It is critical that you put attitude first. Why that's important is for this slide. You will need to reinvent, and you will need to reinvent faster than what you can imagine. Inmobi did many things over the next probably 2-3 years. We ran from one roadmap, we ran 3 country-wise roadmap. Our US roadmap became different, our China roadmap became different, our India roadmap became different. This was the time when Inmobi Glance was launched. From a B2B company, we actually became a B2C company as well. We ended up doing the cloudification of our entire stack. Prior to 2016, our entire stack was running on owned and operated infrastructure with our own data center. And we took one of that most monolithic um, piece of software, and over probably next two, three, um, over the next probably 2, 3 years, we ended up cloudifying our entire infrastructure and ended up moving over Azure and converted our capex into opex. One other principle that we learned during that process is alignment before structure or restructure. The amount of time that the team spent on aligning different pieces of the organization was time well spent. In fact, one of the things that we learned during that period of time, and we sort of follow it even till date, we have this term called as GMs of business unit. Now, GMs of this business unit are people who have ownership to get something done, but they do not have any org structure that enables them to get this done. These are the people who are Inmobi first, leading from the attitude first and getting shit done kind of people. These people do not really depend on the right org structure to get any execution done. And those are the people that we've sort of held extremely close to us as founding team, because those are the people who have always come to our rescue whenever we needed anything in terms of the reinvention. And then the lesson that we learned in that process was also that learn to live on the edge. This is something I think probably very familiar to everyone. I think we as entrepreneurs, we always live on the edge. For the next 3 years, probably the journey that started in 2016 probably went all the way to 2019, and then 2020 when we started to probably heave a big sigh of relief because business had turned around. It had started to massively grow, and we all started to take a sigh of relief. Just then COVID hit, and we had to sort of reinvent ourselves. But what we learned in this whole journey is that the difference between success and failure is your perspective. I don't think the world heard a lot about Inmobi during those 3-4 year period. We were pretty much written off as an organization. Nobody knew what we were doing. We weren't the cool kids trying to build a global business. There were some strong PR articles that came out that literally wrote us off as the organization. And we realized that if we're going to start living by others' perspectives, then someday or the other we will, others' perspective, someday or the other we will always be a failure, or some point in time will be a failure. So we ended up learning a pretty big lesson that we need to draw from our own strength and our own beliefs and take the progression as the success rather than somebody else's interpretation. And that was something that has served us extremely well. We came out of that grind as 3 major units. Inmobi, which is Inmobi Marketing Cloud, which is an extremely large business at scale. Glance, which probably all of you would have heard about. It is a app that lives on your lock screen. And then probably we have 150 million daily active users in India and Southeast Asia. And Reposo, which is in the process of becoming the TikTok of India. Not only these 3 companies, during this grind, we ended up acquiring 2 companies in the US. One is AirServe and one is Insight. And both of these are very, very successful US first organizations that we ended up not only acquiring, but integrating well within our overall story. Now the chapter 3, where are we sort of headed from here? What are we up for as we go in terms of our business and the growth of that business? There are few things that we are focused on quite a lot. One of which is how do we scale our culture? Inmobi is known as an organization that has always had people first principles. If you take on two axes, an axis where you have culture which is very family-led culture, and on the same axis on the other side, you can have a culture of a pro team, a pro US team culture, which was popularized a lot by Netflix and some of the other companies in the Silicon Valley. Uh, we are extremely comfortable with the culture that we've been able to create, which derives a lot from our values of family system, our values of trust, our values of taking people along, our values of not leaving anybody behind in the growth. And as we go along, as we grow from, in fact, right now Inmobi is probably about 2,000 people across uh, across 2,000 homes now, but back when we had offices across about 25, 27 different offices. So with that many scale of people, which comes from about 25 different nationalities, how does one scale that culture to empower the organization to move faster? That we're in the process of discovering that journey, and hopefully this journey will give number of stories that we'll be able to come and talk uh, as we go and build it. The second, remain invested in people forever. For some of you who may have had the opportunity to visit Inmobi offices in Bangalore, this is one of the screens or one of the walls in Inmobi. It has, at that point in time, this wall was created in 2018. It has name of every Inmobian who was there at that point in time. Now, of course, this will probably need 4 times of this wall size or 3 times of this wall size to capture everyone's name. But this remains a symbol of our values forever. Not only you don't only invest in a person when he's part of your company, you also invest in the person when he's gone and when he's trying to become somebody else. There has been about 60 startups that have come out of Inmobi, and we have continued to remain invested in their growth in more ways than one. In fact, many of those startups don't even leave Inmobi in their first year. We created a specific space in the office. They continue to work there. They continue to remain part of Inmobi system. And as and when they feel it's appropriate, they decide to leave and take the flight further. And it's been a process which has enabled us to create these relationships that hopefully will serve us for our life. Remember, it's relationship maximization is the principle, or relationship currency maximization is the principle with which we all live. The third, we are becoming even bolder. It's not often that the company that comes out of India and an Indian heritage can reach where we have reached. We're extremely humble and thankful to everyone who's played their part in the picture. But then it's picture abhi baki hai mere dost. As we go along from here, our competition is with these large global organizations. Our competition is with the large B2C companies. Our competition is with the Instagrams and the Googles and the Snapchats and all the other large B2C companies that have created significantly large ecosystems to take consumers, not only take consumer share of time, but also convert the consumer share of time into large economic value for their advertisers and their customers. How does Inmobi sort of reinvent itself to probably become one of of those companies or someone at that same scale is a vision that we have, and hopefully we have all the right ingredients to be able to imagine that future. And most importantly, as founders, we've learned that this is our life, and this is our life that we're going to be living forever. There has been, for probably 7-8 years, the first 7-8 years in Mobi's journey, I personally told myself at all points in time, let me work hard now. There will be a time to enjoy later on. And then every year I tell myself, yes, there will be a time to enjoy later on. Yes, there will be a time to spend times with my kids and with my wife, with my family, with everyone. And I realized one thing, that time probably is never going to come. In fact, I don't want that stage to come where there is a life post Inmobi. If I don't figure out a way to live my life along with Inmobi, I would probably be hugely unsatisfied one way or the other in the end. So the promise that is being made to me personally, and in fact many other people that I have interacted with in the last few years, that develop your mechanism to embrace this as your life. It is something that you will live. It is something that will be challenging, yet enjoyable. And if you think that the pace is ever going to slow down, it's never going to happen. So this is your life. Learn to enjoy it. Learn to live with it, and learn to make an impact and continue to make impact. So with that, thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and hopefully Inmobi's journey will continue to inspire a generation of entrepreneurs to dream big, and dream big in a manner where they deliver real impact to humanity and the social life of everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abhay. I think it has been a fascinating storytelling by you. I think it's a story of audacity and perseverance, and a story which each and every IIT Kanpur person will be very proud of. Thank you very much for giving such a great presentation today, Abhay. And I wish all the best, and I have no doubt that the other competition whom you have now visualized should be in some way start to get worried about you guys. And and we're all looking forward to a successful IPO, which you have gone in the press as saying that you will do shortly, and there's a lot of money, but and pray for success for all of you.
Thank you, Shyam, and wishing you all best, and have a good life, and stay blessed and stay safe. I know that the things are not that good, but I hope and pray for everyone's safety and success in life. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. So after such an inspiring presentation by Abhay, it is my pleasure to introduce to you to the next segment of the program today. And that is a fireside chat with Amit Prakash. So it's my pleasure to introduce Amit to you. Amit is the co-founder and CTO of Thoughtspot. Prior to starting Thoughtspot, Amit led a team of engineers at Google that was responsible for building large-scale machine learning infrastructure for AdSense ad ranking. Amit is one of the early engineers who joined the Bing team and built the first distributed system there responsible for computations over WebGraph for Bing. Amit is also co-author of Elements of Programming Interviews and Algorithms for Interviews. Amit received his PhD in computer science from the University of Texas at Austin and a Bachelor of Technology in Electrical Engineering from IIT Kanpur. It is my pleasure to also introduce to you Vipin, who will participate in the fireside chat with Amit. Vipin is the founder, MD of Global-Launch.Partners, a platform to help venture-funded businesses to expand operations internationally. Vipin has been a 2x entrepreneur and VC investor in India and Southeast Asia. His last venture, Online Tayari, was acquired by Reliance in 2020 and had raised funding from some of the marquee investors in India and US. Before starting Global-Launch.Partners, Vipin was Senior Director Investments at Fosun RZ Capital. Vipin has managed investments and exits in 9 companies and have been on the board of 7 companies at different times. He has also been an advisor to Government of India for its ambitious digital literacy mission. Vipin completed his undergrad in chemical engineering at IIT Kanpur, where he specialized in biological engineering. I understand that was the year it was launched, and obtained masters from IIM Ahmedabad. And for IIT Kanpur community, to revive the old debate, who is better, Hall 3 versus Hall 2? Actually, he's a Hall 3 guy. Okay, with these words, I invite both Amit and Vipin to come and start the next segment of the program today.
Hey everyone, good morning. Just waiting for Amit to join.
Vipin, how are you?
Hi, good evening to you. I guess it's not very late yet, or too late already.
Yeah, no, it's perfect time. It's 9 p.m. or so. Thank you so much for having me.
Great, pleasure here too. Amit, Shamin has done a phenomenal introduction for yourself. Done a great bit of background telling about you, but would be good to also hear about your story, how you sort of started it up, and a little bit of snippet about what happened at IIT Kanpur. So the first 5-6 minutes, whatever is about yourself, Thoughtspot, and your little bit of story about IIT Kanpur.
Would love to. As you probably all do, I think the 4 years at IIT Kanpur are some of the most cherished memories for me in life, and some of the best lifelong friends that I made there. So it's absolutely had a blast getting a bachelor's degree and building a world-class network at IIT Kanpur. And as I reflect back, I think whatever success I've had, the story of me would not have been possible without the amazing alumni of IIT Kanpur who've helped me every step of the way. I think starting from my father, who was an alumni of IIT Kanpur, and kind of from the very beginning, it was like IIT Kanpur is the best IIT, and if you study well and if you're so lucky, you would actually make it there one day. So he was the original inspiration, and every step of the way, actually. So one of the things that I dreamed of at since childhood, because my father happened to be a professor in an engineering college, was to go earn my PhD from one of the best universities in the world. And when I applied right after graduation for a PhD program, I couldn't get anywhere because I traditional Hindi medium kind of education. I wasn't very good at vocabulary. GRE score were very poor, and so my dreams of going and getting a PhD were almost shattered until I ended up sending application to one of the IIT alums, Professor Adnan Aziz at UT Austin, who happened to be someone who had the best BTech project in IIT Kanpur, and I happened to have that like 8 years later too. So it kind of connected with him, and he took a chance on me, and I was able to go and graduate. And
Hmm.
Within a month of actually moving to US and starting my PhD program, 5 of us from IIT Kanpur ended up in a really bad car accident. I had like 18 fractures from my head to neck to shoulder and everywhere. And I was in a full body suit for about 6 months, and it was a very near death experience. And I could not have survived after that if it was not for the amazing kindness of all the friends I had built at IIT Kanpur, who were at that time in US and helped me and support me through my recovery. I just could not have survived. At a later point in life, when I decided that I wanted to go be an entrepreneur, what do you know? Some of the alums had blazed the trail before me. So in particular, Dheeraj Pandey and Ajit Singh, these two guys had started Nutanix. And when I reached out to Nutanix, to Dheeraj, he connected me with Ajit, and Ajit and I connected, and we got started building Thoughtspot. So yeah, if there's one message I would give to everyone, look around yourself, all your friends and colleagues, whether that is the best ally and that is the best support system you'll have. And support each other and be kind to each other, and it will be an asset lifelong.
That's a wonderful story. I'm sure this personal life experience that you mentioned about that huge accident, getting into it, and then sort of coming out brave and very well, and then obviously going off in life in terms of like doing this massive kind of startup. Definitely an inspiring story. I could also see on the screen a picture of your friends at IIT Kanpur who you shared earlier. Are these guys already still in touch with you? How do you sort of connect, and professionally as well as personally? That would be a good insight for the entrepreneurs as to how does the personal and professional life sort of help people.
Yeah, absolutely. These are some of my best friends. They are my wingmates, starting from Hall 3, going on Hall 1 as well. And we still stay in touch. As you get busy with life and family and children, the thing you don't get to interact as often as you used to, but every time we meet, whether it's been after a month or after a year, it's like no time has been lost, and we are back to the days of pulling each other's leg and having fun and remembering old fond stories. And we are always there to help each other professionally as well. And this was kind of my closest circle of friends, but across my entire career, I've always been able to reach out to various IIT alums, whether it was my batch, whether it was this hall or that hall or different year, and it's always been an amazing experience to work with people or get their support or help them.
Amit, especially since, and this is an audience which consider still sort of contains a large part of people from India so far. A lot of them are studying, and they're like, still not many of them are in the US. Tell us a bit more about how the networking is done among the IIT Kanpur alumni in the US. How do they reach out, and how do they support each other? Just a little bit of snippet, maybe with an example of what happened.
Yeah. So this picture you're seeing is actually me and Ajit signing the papers in the office of the lawyers, incorporating our company about 8.5, 9 years back. And even though Ajit and I overlapped at IIT and knew of each other, we didn't really hang out together and know each other, right? And so when I was looking for co-founder to get started with, and I was very strong technically, but I had very little idea about the business world, about how to raise money, or even how to think about an enterprise startup. I was kind of the algorithms, the problem solver guy, and I needed a partner in crime who would be a complement, right? And so I reached out to Dheeraj. He introduced me to some of the investors that he was close with, and then through them I met a number of potential co-founders, but eventually, when Ajit decided to start something new, Dheeraj was the one who connected us. And then we kind of started meeting every week for coffee and discussing different problems and figuring out if it was the right person I wanted to work with. He was trying to figure out if I'm the right person he wanted to work with, and figuring out the problems at the same time. So yeah, I mean, there are a number of people that I've been able to stay in touch with through college and after, but there are a number of people that, just knowing that they are, IIT alum, you could reach out to them either through LinkedIn or something. And almost invariably, they'll be extremely kind and respond in whatever way they can. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And does it all start around your hostel? Does it start around your batch? Where does the locus lie in that sense? Classic IITian question, right? Where is the locus of all the network typically?
So I've never felt, the need to go and explicitly network with IITK people. It's kind of, in my mind, it's assumed that we share an alma mater.
Okay.
And so in some ways we share each other's best interest. And like whatever connections I have with IIT Kanpur alum is more based on just friendships that have been cultivated over the years, either by the fact that we took a class together, we stayed in a hostel together, or we did some event together, went to some event together, and things like that. I'm not trying to minimize networking. Networking is absolutely important. And it happens at various forums, whether you're going to a conference or whether you are in some sort of IIT, IIT network event or things like that. And it's really important to, put yourself out there and go meet as many people, learn from their experiences and make connections. But in particular for IITK alums, I haven't felt the need to explicitly go and network with people.
Yeah. It's almost as if they're there, right? It's almost like family. You don't reach out to family every morning and stuff, but they're there. I think that's the that I take.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Very nice. So one key message to the audience: build friends. I think Abhay has also emphasized it massively. Build friends, cherish the relationships, build on them, because that's what is the real value that you take away from Kanpur. No matter how far away you are. Candidly, as an entrepreneur myself, there are so many times that over the last almost like now 18 years since I left campus, I might not have reached out to a friend since I left it 18 years back. But over the last like 3-4 months in COVID times, there have been so many instances where people in the US who were my friends and who have left shores and gone back, reached out, and it was always assumed that we are there for each other. So they have their family in India, and the Indian guys immediately supported their family member. Vice versa, if a guy in the US is looking for help, or a guy in India is looking for help to go relocate to US or set up some business in the US, I don't think we've ever even thought that that guy in the US, our batchmate, will not support us. So definitely, I think really adds a lot of value to invest in friendships and not like sort of do backstabbing and running after only points and CGPAs at Kanpur. I think that's the key message I think I would like to draw to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think competition is a good thing to inspire everyone to do better, but I think cooperation always beats competition.
Absolutely, no two doubts about it. Amit, in your journey so far, beyond the personal accident, and which was, I'm sure, a life-changing situation, from the business and entrepreneurial journey that you've gone through, what has been the most challenging piece of the story so far in the so many years that you've done it now?
Yeah, so in a way, Thoughtspot has been almost like a dream journey for me. And there's always difficulty, there's always challenges, and that's what inspires you. Every morning you get up and say, what's the next challenge you can conquer? But we've been extremely fortunate that we never had this kind of do or die kind of moment, that if we don't get this right, we will die as a company.
Okay.
Or and part of the reason why it has been that way is again because of a lot of knowledge and wisdom being passed from one set of company to another to another.
Mm.
So before starting Thoughtspot, Ajit was one of the co-founders at Nutanix, and before Dheeraj and Ajit co-founded Nutanix, they actually went and talked to a number of startup founders and studied what they had done and what worked and what didn't work.
Yep.
And even before that, Dheeraj was part of a startup that didn't survive. And so there's so many learnings that kind of accumulated in one place, which made it very much possible for us to kind of see a little bit ahead of time as to what's coming, what's around the corner. And that really helped us do well. In terms of challenging moments, I would probably pick out one point when, so we had in some ways we are somewhat of a unique startup in the sense that when we got to the design board, quite often, and I don't mean this criticism, but quite often the focus of a startup is to kind of take existing technologies, apply to a new problem, and pull together everything that kind of exists as a concept and build a product and bring it to the market, right? We wanted to solve a problem in a space. We deliberately went to a space that was extremely crowded. And there was a lot of competition, there were a lot of players. And the reason we went there was because it was a large market. It's an extremely valuable problem, the one that we are solving in general in the industry. But what that means is that you have to build a solution that is significantly better than whatever else everyone else has built. And so we kind of almost went on a journey of some core computer science fundamental innovation to be able to build a solution for a problem that no one knew how to solve. And so we ended up building a lot of new systems, building new data structures, new algorithms, so that we could solve the problem in a way that people had tried and never succeeded. And so in terms of technical ambition, what we have built is probably one of the most ambitious take on analytics industry. And as a result of that, it's like when you do that, you kind of run into all kinds of challenges, and then you figure out the problems and fix it.
The VCs
along the way
want a fast kind of deployment. They would want you to like sort of push out faster rather than like spending time designing new stuff. Classic those kind of challenges. But I'm sure Thoughtspot is at a great scale right now, right? And what are the plans now for?
Actually, so I wanted to get to the most challenging time. If you don't, if it's okay, I'll spend a couple of minutes. Yeah. So when we launched our product in the market, one of the very first companies that called us because it solved a very specific need that they had was Walmart. And Walmart was a massive corporation, and initially we were hesitant whether we should even work with them or not, being so small. But we decided to kind of go headfirst and deploy there. And everything was working fine as they were testing things and setting things up. And then they started doing these training sessions where 60, 70 people will be in a room. And the moment the person training them will say, okay, now you should do this and hit enter, everybody will hit enter. And these simultaneous requests will come to our system and our database will kind of get crushed to its knees. And that was probably one of the most challenging times as a company for us, because we felt that the people who trusted in us and kind of put their jobs in line by betting on the tiny startup, we were failing them, and we had to fix this immediately. And so at the time, we were like 20-25% company. And all of us nearly didn't sleep for 2 nights, and like days and nights, we're just kind of finding bugs and fixing them, finding bugs and fixing them. 2 days later, we went with essentially a USB drive with a new patch and said, okay, let's deploy this and let's go. And then they did their next training session and everything was smooth. And from there on, it's been a wonderful journey.
Wow. Another thing that I sort of clearly look back from your thing is this dreamy-eyed thing about being an entrepreneur and being a guy who's always in suits and a rich guy. I don't think entrepreneurship is about that, clearly from this, right? So it's about solving the problem, being more active. And actually, I think the best guys like yourself and Abhay was with us just before this talk. The best guys are the ones who are on the ground and like sort of solving problems themselves. Clearly, those are the guys who become the eventual winners. It's never a very sexy job in that sense, being an entrepreneur. It's tough, but at the same time, it's also rewarding for everyone if you are all putting in the journey toward the right direction. Tell us about the proudest moment so far, Amit, in the journey so far. Where do you think has been the moment which you would always like to cherish and put in front of others, saying, hey, this is what we did, and I'm so proud of it?
Yeah, actually, being a parent, the proudest moments are always associated with, when my daughter does something amazing. But in this context, it's if we talk about professional things, I think the moments that I cherish the most are when. So we've been extremely fortunate as a company to be able to hire pretty much the best of the best talent that is out there that a startup could dream of. And it's somewhat self-congratulatory, but the kind of people we've been able to assemble as a company is it's probably in the 90th or 95th percentile of the general population.
Wow.
And that's the thing that I've been most proud of. And and when one of those people comes to me ever and says that, thank you for creating this company and this significantly changed my life and created a better opportunity for me, that's probably the moment that I cherish the most. The other one that I would pick is we had we've started doing these user conferences for our users.
Yeah.
And last year was all virtual, but before that, so at the end of every user conference, we kind of do a session in the end where the exec team of Thoughtspot stands on stage, and there's everyone who attended the conference is in the audience, and they're free to ask whatever question they want to ask. And there were about 2,000 people there, and one of our customers stood up and said, are you guys looking to get acquired? And we said, no, we are building the company for the long term. And he said, thank you. It would really suck if you guys were, going to sell out for money or something, because what you're doing is so amazing. Keep it independent. And if you ever decide to sell it, I'm going to personally come and fly and tell you that this is a horrible thing to do. So I'm glad that you're planning to keep this independent. And that felt really good, that we built something that our customers feel that way, that they would never like us to change and continue innovating the way we are doing it.
Wow. Such an inspiring thing. Amit, just like we are almost at the end of the talk, what are the last few words of wisdom that you would like to share with the community at IIT Kanpur? There are a couple of professors, senior guys from IIT also, about how we sort of can encourage entrepreneurship at the campus. Just a little bit of your thought process on that.
Yeah, so I think what I've come to learn is I'm trying to prioritize a couple of things in my mind that popped up. So I think the first thing is, in doing anything ambitious or anything important, I think the most important question is to answer why. Why do you want to do it? And entrepreneurship may not even be the right answer for everyone. Right? Like when I got out, for IIT, I really wanted to be a professor somewhere and do fundamental research. And at that time, entrepreneurship wasn't the right answer for me. So you really have to find out why you want to be an entrepreneur. And a lot of times what happens is that if there's this phrase that you cannot be what you cannot see, right? So if you don't have the exposure, if you don't see what people are going through, what challenges they're overcoming and what they're building, then it's a little bit hard to imagine yourself. So I think as an institution, we should definitely try and expose everyone as much as possible to the entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. I think that's really important. And the most important part of that is kind of just answering that why thing. The other thing that I never appreciated back in the day was that doing anything ambitious in life, academic success and doing well in studies and getting good grades is one of the dimensions, but it's just one of the many dimensions. And it's really important to train people to, learn how to collaborate, how to take risks, create situations where taking risk is rewarded. I don't know how things are today, but when I was growing up, our entire society and culture was all about being conservative and finding the safest path.
Yep.
And I think it's really important for us to deliberately create situations where taking risk is rewarded, so that we train our students to be brave and take risk. So I think that's the other thing that took me some time to learn, that to do anything ambitious in life, the most important thing is, are you willing to be brave? And that doesn't mean that you're not afraid. Being brave means that you are afraid and you still go and do it because it's that important to you. So at the time when I left Google and started Thoughtspot, just a year before, financially, I had started making probably 4 to 8 times more than what I was making before.
Yep.
And it was, in some ways, a pretty silly thing for me to leave that and just be 2 people and start a company and take that massive risk. But it actually worked the other way around. In my mind, it was like, given that I've been able to have that kind of financial success, really gives me the freedom to do whatever I really want and what will fulfill me. So I was able to take that out of equation. And being brave, it's not just about financial freedom or, what if I fail? I think being brave also applies to the kinds of problem you can attack.
Yep.
If you look at somebody like Elon Musk, he was coming out of building an internet banking startup, and then he goes and decides to build a space company and a car company, having zero training to do that.
Yep.
And just having this confidence that whatever the problem may be, I'm smart enough that I'll go and figure it out. I'll learn the thing that's needed and I'll figure it out. I think that kind of attitude is extremely important.
Wow. Very inspiring, Amit. Just one thing which the Vice President Talent Association has asked out here is basically, he's a professor in the US and he's curious as to whether there was an overlap between what you're doing at Thoughtspot and what you studied while you're doing your PhD work. Do they correlate, or is it something just by chance that it happened?
So I've happened to change the problem set and the space in which I work quite a bit. And when I was at IIT Kanpur, I was trying to specialize in VLSI, and then with some like I ended up doing computer vision kind of stuff. And then in my PhD, I was again studying formal methods. And then my advisor said that's not the right direction to go. So I ended up working on networking and parallel algorithms.
Yeah.
And then in job, I worked on search. And over here, it's been all about building intuitive interfaces and building a database and BI layer. So I've been all over, but as a sort of my fundamental training as a computer science person, I've been able to pull things from different domains into another domain that people are not thinking of and connect things. So being all over has actually helped me immensely. My master's thesis was actually an idea borrowed from formal methods applied to networking. Even one of the core data structures that we innovated on inside Thoughtspot to make search possible was actually a derivation from that particular data structure that I put in my master's thesis, which had nothing to do with what we are doing today in business intelligence, but just having that breadth allowed me to pull, knowledge from different places and apply where it was needed and people are not thinking about it.
Wow. So the classic debate about being a generalist versus a specialist. So you're saying it should be a good mix, right? So being a generalist allows you to have experience from different fields and get the best when you're looking at solving a particular problem. I remember this classic Google SDE 11 or 13. I think it's called SDE 13, right? The one that the famous story of the hard disk search problem which they faced in the early years. That was
actually I'm not familiar with that story, but I'll go look up after this.
So it was basically a story of how Google in its days when it was booming, the earliest guys at Google, and they were SDE 11, like one of the few co-founding team kind of guys, right? So everybody got together as to why the Google search is failing, why are solutions not coming in. And they banged their heads for like 3 days continuously, day in, day out. All the Google engineers were not able to figure it out. And ultimately what was realized was it was a problem of optimization of how the Google search queries are stored in the hard disks. The innermost circle in which the queries are stored will rotate faster, and the hard disk will sort of fetch results faster from the innermost circle versus the outermost circle. And that was obviously something which came out not because of software knowledge, but more around. So yeah, I think being a generalist sometimes helps, and having that perspective. Definitely.
Yeah, so I've heard some very smart engineering leaders say that they always look for T-shaped individuals, which have kind of a little bit of breadth mile wide, and then they're really specialist in their area where they have a mile depth in a narrow field. So I guess on that analogy, I would not be a T-shaped. I would probably be sort of something with 3 different spikes or 4 different spikes in different areas.
X-shaped, Ivan, X-Men kind of thing. Great, Amit. This was really good chatting up with you. I'm sure the community of students, people attending really like this talk and are inspired now. Really look forward to sort of staying connected. And all of us at IIT Kanpur are thankful that you took out time today and shared with everybody your pearls of wisdom. We would also like to encourage you to sort of be engaged and stay engaged with the people at the campus to help them.
No, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to, at least virtually come back to the campus and talk to everyone. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. With this, I'll just now hand it over to the coordinators of the event to guide everyone for the next event planned today. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending the talk.
To tell the audience that our next talk will be at 4 p.m. with Mukesh Pansal and Ramakant Sharma. Mukesh Pansal is the founder of Myntra and CoFounder. Ramakant Sharma is the founder of LifeSpace. So stay tuned for updates when you will be auditorium. So just come sharp at 4 p.m. and catch the unicorns talking. And apart from that, we have real startup pitches going on in the SMC Select event, and it will start at 1 p.m. in auditorium. So you're welcome to attend that also. For more queries, you can message us, you can mail us, or you can call us on the numbers. Thank you.